Andrei Romanovich Chikatilo was born on October 16, 1936, in Yablok, a small village in Ukraine, which was then part of the Soviet Union. His early life was marked by hardship and misery. Born during the devastating Holodomor, a man-made famine that killed millions in Ukraine, Chikatilo grew up in a world of hunger, deprivation, and fear. His father, Roman, was conscripted into the Red Army during World War II and captured, leading to his family being ostracized for having a traitor as a father. Chikatilo's mother, Anna, told him stories of how his older brother, Stepan, had been kidnapped and cannibalized during the famine, a tale that would haunt Andrei and shape his understanding of violence and death. As a child, Chikatilo was shy, introverted, and suffered from bedwetting, for which his mother would beat him. He was also bullied by his peers for his weak physique and timid nature. Despite these challenges, Chikatilo excelled academically, showing a keen interest in literature and becoming the editor of his school newspaper. However, his struggles with impotence and inability to form healthy relationships left him isolated and frustrated. Early sexual frustrations and deviance. As Chikatilo entered adolescence, he began experiencing disturbing fantasies. His first sexual encounter was a traumatic failure, leading to a lifelong battle with impotence. This inability to perform sexually only deepened his feelings of inadequacy and shame. In his early 20s, Chikatilo moved to the city of Rostov-on-Don, where he attended Rostov University. Despite his intelligence, he struggled with social interactions and continued to face ridicule from peers. He developed a habit of spying on young women and children, deriving pleasure from the act. Marriage and attempt to normalcy. In an attempt to lead a normal life, Chikatilo married a woman named Feodosia in 1963. The marriage was arranged by his younger sister, and although it lacked passion, the couple managed to have 2 children, Ludmila and Yuri. Chikatilo took up teaching positions at various schools, but his inability to control his impulses led to numerous complaints from students about inappropriate behavior. He was eventually fired from his teaching job due to allegations of molestation. Descent into darkness. Unable to maintain a stable job and increasingly obsessed with his violent sexual fantasies, Chikatilo began spending more time in secluded areas such as parks and train stations, places where he could observe vulnerable individuals. It was in these environments that he found the opportunity to act on his dark desires. First murder. The victim. The act. The satisfaction. On December 22, 1978, Andrei Chikatilo committed his first known murder. His victim was a 9-year-old girl named Yelena Zakotnova. Luring her to an abandoned house, Chikatilo attempted to rape her, but failed due to his impotence. Enraged, he stabbed the girl repeatedly, achieving orgasm at the sight of her blood and pain. After killing her, he disposed of her body in a river. This act marked the beginning of a decade-long killing spree. A string of murders. For the next 12 years, Chikatilo would murder over 50 victims, mostly children and young women. His modus operandi was to lure his victims into secluded areas with promises of money, food, or companionship. Once isolated, he would overpower them, often binding their hands and gagging them. Chikatilo's murders were characterized by their brutality. He would stab his victims repeatedly, mutilate their bodies, and sometimes engage in acts of cannibalism, removing body parts and consuming them. This violence was not only an expression of his sexual desires, but also his deep-seated rage and need for control. Victims. Vera Shevkin, 1983, a 19-year-old woman found in the woods with multiple stab wounds. Vera's murder was notable for the extreme brutality inflicted on her, highlighting Chikatilo's growing need for violence. Irina Karabelnikova, 1984, a 16-year-old schoolgirl, lured away and found mutilated in the woods. Her murder further illustrated Chikatilo's shift toward attacking teenagers and young women, believing them easier to approach. Svetlana Markova, 1984, a 14-year-old girl whom Chikatilo attacked, mutilated, and cannibalized. Her murder marked a turning point, as Chikatilo's killings became more frequent and frenzied, and his acts of cannibalism more pronounced. Alexander Kravchenko, 1984, a 10-year-old boy lured away from a bus station. Chikatilo's confidence had grown to the point where he could abduct and murder a child in a public setting. This act showed his increasing boldness and belief in his invincibility. Alexei Kobatov, 1985, a 10-year-old boy, one of Chikatilo's youngest victims, found mutilated in the forest. His death highlighted Chikatilo's predilection for young boys, particularly those who were trusting and easily misled. Natalia Golisovskaya, 1987, a 12-year-old girl, another innocent lured to her death. Her murder, like those before her, involved extreme violence and post-mortem mutilation. Yuri Tereshchenko, 1988, an 11-year-old boy whose body was found in a wooded area, bearing the hallmarks of Chikatilo's brutality. The escalation of his crimes, targeting children, emphasized his complete lack of empathy and conscience. Elena Varga, 1989, a 19-year-old student whom Chikatilo attacked in a secluded area. Her murder was another example of Chikatilo's preference for secluded, wooded areas where he could carry out his crimes undetected. Ivan Bilovetsky, 1990, an 11-year-old boy, his murder would be one of the last in Chikatilo's spree. By this time, the authorities had intensified their efforts to capture the killer, leading to Chikatilo's downfall. Each victim's story is a tragic reminder of the lives cut short by Chikatilo's reign of terror. They were young, vulnerable, and unsuspecting, making them easy targets for a predator like Chikatilo. The randomness of his victims and the brutality of his methods instilled a climate of fear and panic in the Soviet Union, as no one knew who would be next. A failing system. The initial response of the Soviet authorities to the string of murders was marked by confusion and denial. The concept of a serial killer was relatively foreign in Soviet society, which prided itself on the safety and superiority of its social system. Admitting the existence of a serial killer would have been a significant blow to the image of Soviet security. The early investigation was plagued by inefficiency, lack of coordination, and misdirection. The police failed to link the murders initially, viewing them as isolated incidents rather than the work of a single individual. The formation of Operation Forest Path. As the bodies continued to pile up, it became impossible to ignore the pattern. In 1982, the Soviet authorities launched Operation Forest Path, a dedicated task force to hunt down the killer. The task force, led by Major Mikhail Fedosov, faced numerous challenges. The Soviet Union's vastness and the killer's mobility made tracking him difficult. Furthermore, the lack of advanced forensic technology, poor communication between different regional police departments, and the overarching secrecy and bureaucracy of the Soviet regime hindered the investigation. Surveillance and narrowing the search. The task force initiated extensive surveillance operations at bus and train stations, parks, and wooded areas, where they believed the killer was finding his victims. Undercover agents were posted in these areas, hoping to catch the killer in the act. In 1984, Chikatilo was briefly detained after he was seen attempting to lure young women in a marketplace. However, a blood test failed to match the type found at the crime scenes, and without solid evidence, Chikatilo was released. This misstep allowed him to continue his killing spree for several more years. The false trails and wrongful arrests. The pressure to solve the case led to several wrongful arrests. In 1984, a man named Yuri Kaleyev was apprehended and later executed for crimes Chikatilo had committed. The execution of innocent individuals highlighted the desperation and flaws in the Soviet criminal justice system. These wrongful arrests did nothing to halt the murders, and the real killer remained free, taunting the police with each new victim. A turning point. By 1989, the case had become one of the most extensive manhunts in Soviet history. The breakthrough came in 1990 when Chikatilo was spotted by an undercover officer acting suspiciously at a train station near one of the crime scenes. He was seen trying to engage with young children and was followed by the officer, who noted his attempts to lure a young girl into the woods. Chikatilo was arrested shortly after, carrying a knife, rope, and Vaseline, items associated with his crimes. Arrest and initial interrogation. After his arrest in November 1990, Chikatilo initially denied any involvement in the murders. His calm and composed demeanor, combined with the lack of direct evidence linking him to the crimes, posed a challenge to the investigators. However, the police were determined not to let him slip through their fingers again. They re-examined past case files, witness testimonies, and any forensic evidence that could connect Chikatilo to the murders. Dr. Buchanovsky's role. Recognizing the psychological aspect of Chikatilo's crimes, investigators brought in Dr. Buchanovsky, who had created the killer's profile. Buchanovsky's involvement was crucial. He engaged Chikatilo in a series of conversations, gradually gaining his trust. Over time, Chikatilo began to open up, discussing his life, his impotence, and his fantasies. He found in Buchanovsky a figure he could relate to and confide in, which eventually led to his confession. The confession. After several days of interrogation, Chikatilo finally confessed to 56 murders, providing chilling details of each crime. He described how he lured his victims, the pleasure he derived from their suffering, and his rituals of mutilation and cannibalism. Chikatilo's confessions were horrifying in their explicitness. He showed no remorse for his actions and spoke with a detachment that unnerved even the most seasoned investigators. His confessions were recorded and used as key evidence in the upcoming trial. The forensic evidence. In addition to his confession, forensic evidence began to mount against Chikatilo. A closer examination of the crime scenes revealed traces of semen that matched his blood type. Witnesses from previous crime scenes identified Chikatilo as the man they had seen with the victims. The combination of forensic evidence, witness testimonies, and Chikatilo's own confessions formed a comprehensive case against him. The trial. Chikatilo's trial began on April 14, 1992, in the city of Rostov-on-Don, and it quickly became a media sensation. The courtroom was packed with the families of victims, journalists, and curious onlookers, all eager to see the face of the monster who had terrorized their country. Chikatilo was charged with 53 counts of murder, though he had confessed to 56. During the trial, he exhibited bizarre behavior, including shouting obscenities, stripping naked, and accusing the court of framing him. His erratic behavior was seen by many as an attempt to feign insanity and avoid the death penalty. The verdict. Despite his outbursts, Chikatilo was found mentally fit to stand trial. The judge, Justice Akubzanov, found him guilty on 52 of the 53 charges. He was sentenced to death for each of the murders, and his sentence was to be carried out by a single gunshot to the back of the head, the standard method of execution in Russia at the time. When asked if he wanted to appeal, Chikatilo simply shrugged, showing no sign of remorse or emotion. Execution. On February 14, 1994, Andrei Chikatilo was executed in Novocherkassk prison, ending the life of one of the world's most notorious serial killers. His death brought a sense of closure to the families of his victims and a dark chapter in Soviet and Russian criminal history. Andrei Chikatilo's case highlighted the complexities of criminal psychology and the challenges of law enforcement in tracking down a serial killer. His crimes shook the Soviet Union to its core, exposing flaws in the justice system and the dangers of political interference in criminal investigations. The fear he instilled in the hearts of millions during his reign of terror remains a grim reminder of the potential for evil that exists in human nature. Chikatilo's story also serves as a cautionary tale about the importance of understanding and addressing the psychological factors that can lead to such monstrous behavior. His life, crimes, and the pursuit of justice against him have been studied extensively by criminologists, psychologists, and law enforcement agencies worldwide, contributing to a greater understanding of serial killers and the methods used to apprehend them. The butcher of Rostov may be gone, but his legacy lives on in the annals of criminal history, a testament to the darkness that can lurk behind the most unassuming of facades. Thank you for watching this in-depth exploration of the life and crimes of Andrei Chikatilo, one of the most notorious serial killers in history. If you found this video informative and want to see more content like this, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to Peaceful Stories. By subscribing, you'll be the first to know when we upload new videos on true crime, historical mysteries, and more. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. If you have any thoughts or suggestions on topics you'd like us to cover in future videos, please leave a comment down below. We love hearing from you. And remember, stay curious, stay vigilant, and take care of each other.
See you next time.